Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dying Time is here. That's right, we are still talking Bride of Chucky on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from somewhere in between New York State and New Jersey. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we are dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, and that is the characters. We're going to unpack all the goriest of details from 1998's Bride of Chucky in the hopes that a newlywed's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes that we can make at their expense. And as always, there is only one person that I trust, that if I am going to try to seduce another couple in a Niagara Falls no-tell motel, that she's going to swipe that wallet when no one's looking. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
You know, people throw the word masterpiece around a little too casually. but I split this into two viewings. I watched the first half, and I watched the second half tonight. And when the movie ended, I just sort of, you know, that gif of Robert Redford where it like slowly zooms in. He just kind of like smiles and nods knowingly. That's kind of me at the end of this movie.
You gave it the old Jeremiah Johnson treatment.
I did indeed.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. I really can. I mean, this has been a joy. It really has. Not that I didn't enjoy Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's just that, you know, some of the entries weren't as hot as others. It can get a little stifling, but man, even if you just divorced it from the rest of what I consider a very stellar franchise, Bride of Chucky is a damn good time.
It really is, and it's I say that without irony. It's not a so bad it's good. No, it's actually good.
Yes, it aims for the stars, and by God, I think it actually hits them. Gina, I don't want to alarm you, but we are not alone. That's right. We have a special guest. He is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Consequence of Sound. And of course, he's the co-host of such podcasts as The Losers Club and Halloweenies. He's the one, the only Michael Roffman. How are you doing today, Michael?
Good. How are you doing?
It is such a pleasure to have you here. I'm doing great, and I'm happy you're along for the ride. I've been a longtime listener to you, particularly in the Losers Club, because I'm a very big Stephen King fan, so I've heard your voice many, many times, and I would love to say I'm a fan of Halloweenies, but I can't listen to other people talk about these movies because I've seen them too often. It took us 2.5 years to get through the Friday the 13th franchise, and sometimes I don't ever want to see them again.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Honestly, the two of you go so in depth with the movies that, I was blown away by it because we thought we were in depth. The first episode for Halloweenies, I think, was chocked. Was that 4.5 hours? I think it clocked into. And we're like, well, we covered it all. And then I go I'm scanning through all your titles, and I'm like, holy shit, they go really deep into these episodes. And I think it's so smart that you split a lot of them too, because looking back, when we covered so many of the other films, especially when you get to that first one in the franchise, when you just go all in on the history and everything and the lore and the mythology and your first impressions, etc. 2 hours of that is right there alone, just in the context. And then you all of a sudden get into the actual meat and the nitty gritty of the movie. And you're like, oh wait, now we're at 3 hours. Oh my God, what are we doing? And I agree with you. There have definitely been situations where because I listen to a number and plethora of horror podcasts, and I do try to skip the ones that we've covered too, just because it's it does feel almost like Groundhog Day.
I just feel like there's a conversation happening that I should naturally be a part of. I'm I'm not here to participate. I'm here to enjoy their perspective on it.
Yeah.
Although I must say, I did dip my toe recently into Horror Queers for their coverage of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Yeah.
Just so I could hear someone else complain about it. Still feel we're right, Gina. I still feel we nailed it on the head, and I agree with all the points made in that podcast as well.
Yeah, that's actually one I had to skip too, because we actually had Trace on our episode for the remake in November. So I felt bad for him because I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe you're doing this again. Literally only, I think maybe a half a year later, but they also had to redo Nightmare 2, but I think that movie is really underrated and phenomenal. So I think that was like a good one to revisit. But that remake it's tough. It's a Snorpalooza for me.
Oh
but,
man, it is so brown.
Yeah,
so brown.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about a terrible revival of a horror franchise. We're here to talk about a really excellent one in Bride of Chucky. So, Michael, we have a quick tradition here. We always like to hear where our guests first encountered the film we're talking about. So, where did you first catch Bride of Chucky?
So, I'm from South Florida, and I am, I'm 36 this year. So, I was about 14 years old when this movie came out, and the late 90s were a very interesting time because and this is pre-Columbine, so they weren't that strict with the rated R, but they still were pretty strict with rated R movies in theaters. And I vividly remember after Scream in 96, like I had already been into really into horror movies and such, but once Scream came out, it kind of solidified any notions I had about why I love like horror, right? So I was like, oh God, like, all right, so this is a revival that's happening. And so 98 felt like such a peak year because like Halloween H2O happened like August 5th like of that year, and then literally like that I think I even found out about like Bride of Chucky because of the trailer that was attached to Halloween H2O, and I was like, oh my God, this is such a fun year. Like all I mean, two like total titans of horror are back. And I remember opening night, me and my friends had to sneak in at AMC Coleridge in Fort Lauderdale because they just, obviously we weren't able to buy tickets and we were only 14, and I just remember it being one of the most enjoyable experiences of that era because everyone was just having a blast. And I don't think anyone expected to have that much fun. And even revisiting it for the podcast, because I honestly haven't seen this in over 10 years. And I just forgot how well done it is. I mean, just in terms of execution, because it was right before it started getting crazy into CGI. And so you still had a lot of great animatronics. And then in terms of the mix of like horror and comedy, like it's so good, and like the camp is right on target. And so I mean, seeing it for the first time, I loved it. I think I saw it and snuck into a bunch of times, and then when it finally hit it, like HBO or Blockbuster, I think I rented it like a number of times. But I love this movie. I had the movie Maniacs toys for it. I just was totally blown away by it, and one of the better 90s sequels, especially, that I think that still stands up for me. So I'm a big fan of this one.
We count ourselves in that too. We really enjoyed the first half, but let's dig to Bride of Chucky once again. Let's do this the way we usually do. All right, let's find out who's still left alive at this point in the movie. Let's do a quick body count. First, we have Jesse. He's young, he's dumb, and he's the owner of 2 cum gutters. Next, there's Jade, who has decided to just throw caution to the wind in 2 major ways. 1, run away with Jesse with only $500 in his pocket, and 2, wear an ascot like she's Fred from fucking Scooby-Doo. And then there's David, the gay friend who's only concerned with making sure your heterosexual needs are met for some fucking reason. And of course, in the in-between alive and dead category, we have Chucky and Tiffany, who are 2 grown adults who have made terrible choices in their lives and are now condemned one another to the living hell of being trapped inside a doll's body. But don't get too worried about them, because in about 20 minutes from now, we're going to be talking about both of them fucking. So that's where we find ourselves. We left Jesse and Jade just in the aftermath of Needle Nose being blown up in his car thanks to Chucky, and the 2 of them immediately give each other a look that I think we can all relate to. Is the person I'm in love with the murderer? So Gina, have you ever looked at your significant and thought, I bet you that guy blew up someone in a car once?
Yeah, now this is the kind of the only part of the movie that doesn't work for me. It's they start suspecting each other mostly because the plot demands that they should. Yeah. And there's just no no reason for them to even think that the other one would be a serial killer.
Yeah, like it's weird because they aren't really that apart. You know, there's not enough like time for him to be like, all right, well, I'm leaving. For him to be like, all right, well, I literally like massacred 2 people next door. It just doesn't. There isn't that time lapse for it to be earned. So I agree. Yeah, it does feel like plot armor in a weird way.
It probably would have helped if she had not dropped that bag of that, which appears to be filled with Lay's potato chips and Lay's potato chips only.
Yeah,
that would have given her a bit of an alibi. But I also think they're heavily influenced by the young woman who appears to be wearing her dad's flannel, who points at both of them and said, "It's them. They're the murderers," and they immediately run.
Yeah,
from the scene of the crime.
right after Neil Nose's car blows up, she points. She goes, "There they are," and I'm like, "There who are?"
There's like 30 people in this scene. Like, how do they like single them out like that easily? That felt very convenient.
I think that lady looks at that ascot and goes, "That is the neckwear of a murderer."
Yeah.
No sane person would walk out of doors wearing something like that.
Yeah, and it's also like, wow, look at those 2 ridiculously gorgeous people that look like they look like 2 leads in a movie. They must be up to something, no good.
Look at all the cameras pointed in their direction. You had to have done something, right? Yeah. This is the aftermath of cops on our society. So we get into a conversation between Jesse and Jade where they subtly and then not so subtly ask one another, "So why did you murder that guy?" And their conversation ends up sending Chucky and Tiffany into a massive giggle fit. And I don't blame them.
Yeah.
It is very weird, their conversation of dancing around whether or not you got into, you're fleeing from the scene of a crime with the person who committed the crime. Mm-hmm. And their just denials make them think, oh, it has to be you. It's like, don't believe that girl in the flannel. She doesn't know everything. She's not the boss of you.
Yeah, and what's also strange is that this is literally like preceding them deciding that they need to get married.
Yeah, and she just looks like she's about to like just explosively vomit all over the place when she's I don't know the person running officiating that marriage, what is he doing marrying these people when she looks like she's being held at gunpoint?
I know. I mean, maybe they're used to that because it's like, roadside marriage, but it seemed a little bit like there had to be some sort of questions. And it's not, I don't feel like it was campy enough where you could kind of get away without having some sort of weird, awkward question. Like if this is a little more farcical, I think you could kind of put that under the rug, but like it is a little suspicious. But I mean, maybe they were trying to be like, oh, well, here we got Bonnie and Clyde here, so let's just get them through the doors.
That and the entire media leaps to the idea that they're twosome that's just cutting through cops left and right. I mean, it is a tad suspicious. The 3 out of the 4 dead bodies, because no one is going to find that one in the trunk. The 3 out of the 4 first dead bodies are cops.
Yeah.
This movie really has it out for cops.
Well, it's weird too because they don't know. I mean, obviously they know that the cop car exploded, but they still haven't really found out like the whole situation with Warren and everything where he's in the car.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I had is like, would you run? Like in this situation, like the cop car explodes. I mean, I guess the only reason why they had the flannel, character point out it's them is to get them to run because like for me, like this car explodes. I'm probably not running, with all these witnesses. It just seems like that would be like the bad choice to do.
Well, I don't think they are good in the moment reactors.
No.
And that seems to play out throughout the majority of the movie up until the just about the end when they finally make a plan in motion. You're like, oh, okay. You're a thinking, feeling human being. But before that, they're very attractive mannequins who continually make the dumbest moves possible.
Yeah.
Which, is what the magic carpet that this movie rides on. So we're not going to, dig on them too much. In the middle of this, they receive a phone call from David asking, what the fuck are you doing? This distracts them from the blood of comedy giant John Ritter, which is leaking out of the underneath of the bench seat in this van that they've stashed the dead body in. So they decide to lay low in the honeymoon capital of northern New York State, and that is Niagara Falls. Oh, listen, it's Monster Magnet. They were a band.
Yeah, they sure were.
God.
They sure were.
Oh boy! If I will say, out of all the soundtracks of the '90s, because I still listen to a lot of them. Like, and this is only like what 10 months after Scream 2 soundtrack, which is I still think one of the best soundtracks ever. And like, I think a few months removed from, maybe it was a year removed from like it was a few months removed from The Faculty, which is great. This soundtrack, with the exception of like Blondie, is so like late '90s that like it literally like it listens like a time capsule. Like I opened my locker from like middle school and here's my CDs from my backpack that had patches that had Soundgarden on it, and like Slayer and Power Man 5000, and it was hilarious just how if there's anything that dates the movie, it's literally just the soundtrack for me. I mean,
But it's also not out of place.
It's not.
It doesn't really. It weirdly melds with the environment of it quite well.
Yeah.
As opposed to Ronnie Yu's other clash of the horror titans, Freddy versus Jason, which just sounds like the most haphazard homunculi of butt rock ever collected into one 90-minute film. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to any of those songs to appear on vinyl. Nevertheless, be composited into the finished product of a film. What I'm saying is, it sucks.
I have to agree with you on that. But one of the things so here's an anachronism that happened in the first half. I don't know if you pointed this out yet, but one of the things I thought was kind of strange is that, like, all right, so they're criticizing the music that's playing, and then White Zombie's Thunder Kiss 65 plays, and like Chucky, vibes to it. He does he like does the devil horns and everything.
Yeah.
And the thing that is interesting about that is that, actually no, I think this is in the second half. It's in the when he does the fist bump in he's like, music's gone to shit since I died. Well, the thing that's crazy is that, like, so the White Zombie, that song came out in like 93 or 92. It was off of I think it was La Sexorcisto. I can't remember. I never say it right.
Sexorcisto, yep.
Yeah. So like, all right. So if we're gonna go by the timeline, Child's Play 3, which is where you conceivably was like last living, was like 91. So it seems weird that he'd like be like, oh yeah, White Zombie, this hit. I don't know. I'm sorry. I didn't want to go on a tangent on the soundtrack, but that was one thing I pointed out. Like, I was like, wait a second. Why the hell would he be a White Zombie fan? Like, that makes no sense.
First of all, he's a huge fan of that division of Universal Music Group. He just loves everything they do. And so that label, he's just picking up whatever.
Yeah.
And the other thing is just it fits him. He's a Chicago boy. There's we'll get back to how Chicago he is a little bit later on, but I forgive it.
Yeah.
Because everything that revolves around that particular sequence, I kind of love. For example, Tiffany, is gazing at this neon angel outside of the drive-by wedding place, and she says out loud, almost just talking to herself, because she knows that Chucky isn't listening. I always, a big church wedding I always dreamed of a big church wedding with my picture in the paper. Not the usual mugshot either, but something really flattering. She's really given it a lot of thought. Everything that happens in that car just feels like a hangout movie. And there's an easy chemistry between those two. And this is the most romantic part of the movie for what is really the central couple.
Yeah.
Jesse and Jade are the side couple. They're almost a B story, or as like I said before, the sort of magic carpet that the real story flies on. And what's happening between them, I think, is where the real gold is. And because they're filled out by actors who are just at the right place and the right time, it sings.
Yeah, I look at Jesse and Jade as like the adult characters in Toy Story, like the humans, where they're like, oh, here they are. All right, well, when are they going to leave the room so we can go back to the main characters? Okay, cool, awesome, bye. Like,
yeah, that's exactly. I had no vested interest in whether or not they were going to be able to run off and get married or not.
No, it was like, get me back to I want to see more rapport between, Tiffany and Chucky. Like that's just the meat of the story, and it's so good. And like in terms of like scripting, I want to say like this might be Don Mancini's finest hour. Like even over like even the original ones. Like I think like the dialogue here is so funny and so well written, and like even down to like the fact like even the lines that you were saying just then, like there's a tragedy to it. Like I actually think like Tiffany is like a really like sad character, and like I like for the most part I felt really bad for her throughout the whole movie, and yet at the same time have to pinch myself and be like, all right, well, they're two serial killers and dolls. Okay, let's just remind yourself this, Mike. But like at the same time, like really feeling for them, like it like at least for Tiffany, especially with the reveal when she's like, how the hell am I in this body? Like what did you do to me? Like there is like a tragedy to this for her.
Well, it takes the so much. I love Bride of Frankenstein. It's a fantastic movie, but it invests very little in the titular character.
Yeah,
she's literally a plot point. A very striking plot point that is memorable and has lasted decades, near unto, we're at 90 years plus at this point. But we don't know the bride. Here, Dawn manages to create a bride that takes a real journey. We see her start with one goal, shift that goal to something different, marry those two goals together, and practically marry in literal sense, and then have a violent breakup. And that's something that a lot of horror movies, particularly at the time, they gave you thrills and they gave you great characters, but this is a real good story journey that I would say ranks up right at the top of the 90s horror batch for me.
Oh, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. It's what watching it with, in my 30s, as opposed to like when I was like a teen, or I don't know when I watched. I had to have watched it when I was in my early 20s, whatever. It made me realize just how just more sophisticated it was than I thought. I mean, like I'm sure when I walked out of it in '98, the first thought I had was like, well, I've seen dolls fuck. And Chucky still got it, like, and I'm sure I used some quips and stuff like that when I went out and hung out with friends and stuff. But like with this, it's like there's so much thought into the relationships here in ways that I don't think any of the characters in any of the previous sequels, with maybe the exception of Child's Play 2 with Andy and his stepsister, in a way, quote unquote stepsister, not really stepsister, I get foster sister, but it was really smart. I mean, I was shocked. I was blown away by how much thought was actually welded into their relationship here.
What I really love upon this particular revisit is the juxtaposition in one scene as they're taking their final vows. Don Mancini has created a sequence in which Chucky is stabbing a dude from behind. While two people who do not trust one another are able to get legally married 50 yards away. And you really get the like, there's some commentary happening in this movie. It is a wonderful gore fest, and it is very funny, but there's more going on here the more you dig into it. And the meat in that sandwich, I really enjoy biting into. Of course, Chucky rounds off that killing spree of poor John Ritter.
Oh, God.
I can't imagine how long he was in that chair to get all those nails in his face day in, day out. But he holds the knife up to his face and, quote, "A true classic never goes out of style." And there's just so much panache to the proceedings here. It just leaps off the screen as something more than just another horror sequel.
Yeah. And it's smart in the way that it does its references. I mean, this is a movie that literally starts with the most, like, at the time, I want to say the most MCU-esque sort of thing, where you literally see all the horror icons in like the lockers. Like I remember as a kid, just that sort of like quote unquote inside baseball or connective tissue or whatever you want to call it, trivia was just mind blowing to me. I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe this stuff is happening. And it's ironic, or I guess just maybe coincidental that like, you know, you would go on to do like Freddy versus Jason. But like at the time it was like, wow, this is really cool. But I love those type of Easter eggs because it's like, yeah, it's blatant because it's literally right in your face, but it's just enough where you can go, oh, okay, yeah, like this is kind of fun, making a little nod to like the horror community. And even that stuff doesn't feel like lame or in your face, or just, it's like subtle. Like even with like the nails on the face, he's like, oh, I've seen that before, and like referencing Hellraiser. Like I love that. Like, and it's so not like I feel like today it would have been so much more ostentatious, you know, like it would have been a little more transparent. It would have been like big neon signs pointing out to the Easter eggs now, and I just kind of like the little subtle things that they put on here. I also love that when Warren dies, they do the thing that you never really see in horror movies or in any movies where there's something that's sticking out of someone and they fall on it. Like,
yeah, that's always gruesome,
right? Like, oh, when you see the nails actually go further into his head, like I was just like, God, they really tortured John Ritter in this. Jesus, just really,
It just makes me miss him all the more. I wish that guy was still around. But let's talk about some other suspicious straights in this movie, and that's Diane and Russ. They're two young lovers, thieves, and not-so-secret swingers. And in Jesse and Jade's honeymoon suite, they kind of sweep in.
That's a bizarre. Let me just stop you right there. This is a very bizarre con they're running.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
they just walk into people's hotel rooms and proceed to pretend to hit on them.
Yeah.
Or legitimately hit on them, and they would have stolen their wallet regardless. Because what I don't quite get is when we go back to Diane and Russ's room, Diane's rather put out, you know, I guess because A, she only got $500 from that wallet, and two, that she feels they would have gotten better, quote unquote, action at Club Med, which is, now correct me if I'm wrong because I've never attended club, but I believe that an all-inclusive resort would have been less of a cash cow, but maybe more of a swingers cow.
Yes,
if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I think she was down to clown in the parlance.
Oh, I agree.
I just don't know. I just don't know how often that would work for them, though. I mean, usually you would have to, you know, maybe you have a little conversation with people, kind of, you know, loosen them up a little bit. You don't just, you know, walk into their hotel room in lingerie.
No.
I'm here, you know.
Well, I think you basically reduced the conversation down to a single question. And so maybe there's less time investment, and that opens up your evening to more possibilities. I don't know how they live, but it is an interesting character dynamic that these two have either been fucking or stealing their way through various couples locales, and it seems to be doing okay for them. Maybe not as okay as they might want.
It's strange because it's like both couples are incredibly attractive, and they're obviously like put off by the attitude that you have of Jade and Jesse, who are coming off of just, you know, watching a cop explode. So I get it why they would want him to get out of the motel room. But I think there's almost like a win-win in the game that like if they just go right into the room without the guns ablazing, but just the sex ablazing, they can easily cop the wallet. Now, the end game of having sex, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe there was an ego here where they thought like, well, hey, look, we're hunks, we're babes. We're going to be able to like win this over. And I guess maybe they felt that they're outmatched. And they're like, well, they're not into it. Let's just leave. We got the wallet. We're good. I do think that their game plan needs some tweaking. I agree with you for sure.
You know, who knows where they could have taken this probe?
Yeah.
But of course, we're not going to get to that. Let's discuss how they meet their unfortunate end. First, we see, I don't know, the best lead into sex, the sort of aggressive, you know, pushing of
they're another horror couple who's bad at sex.
Mm-hmm.
Gina, how many movies now have we watched people, as particularly guys, try to fuck the hip bone or upper thigh of
nobody's
a woman?
Nobody's removing
like,
underwear. Nothing is like. I've not seen the horror movies. I have a dearth of good sex scenes, and I don't know why. But if you look,
I wonder if it's parody. Like, it's just trying to be like as bad as possible because it's like you could get chuckles in the audience.
I think it's a pretty common. I'm trying to think if we've seen any movies that had a sex scene that was decent, and I honestly can't think of any. They're all framed like that, where it's just some dude fumbling around like it's his first time. Like, everyone's half dressed, nobody knows where anything is.
No.
You know, it's.
I think we have to go all the way back to the original Friday the 13th for anything that remote. I mean, we at least get to see some Kevin Bacon.
Yeah. Fair point.
And they seem to be having a good time. And outside of that, like, maybe the remake with your boob placement is perfect.
Yeah.
Is at least a good comic version where at least it looks like they're in the position that human beings would need to be in to have sex. That's a grade bump.
It was fun. Well, on the Halloweenies, we talked to Tom Savini recently, and I asked him, I was like, well, did you ever, keep up with the Friday the 13th movies? And he's like, I don't really watch them after like I think it was like 7 or 8 or something that he stopped. But like, he's like, well, I was in the movie theater, and he like talks about how he sneaks into the different theaters, and right around the time that Friday the 13th, the remake came out, and he went in with a bunch of friends and watched that scene, and the whole like, what's the line? It's like, your tits are stupendous or something like that, or like,
yes.
And him and his friends were just like, he said, and his friends were just like laughing, like, who the fuck wrote this? Like, this is just ridiculous. But I will say, I think
it is very in character.
It is
for that person to say that.
Yes, it is. I agree. The one thing I will say with these scammers and con artists, I guess I'm not too surprised that their sex is too bad when I see the tattoo on the upper left shoulder of that's literally what I guess it's like the total cliche late 90s moon tattoo that would be like on the that you'd probably get from the PacSun crowd.
Exactly. It's like, do you see this t-shirt I wore when I was 12?
Yeah.
I want that permanently added to my body.
Right?
In a place I can't see it, but others can.
I brought this empty Capri Sun container. Could you actually tattoo this on my upper left shoulder blade?
How are you at transposing the Ecto Cooler bottle onto my body?
Now that's a tattoo I would actually maybe get. I like
sure.
Slimer, but that is that's God. I need to bring back the Ecto Cooler, please.
Speaking of juice-related death, so they begin to, and I put this in air quotes, big dick fingers make love. And they notice in the mirror that is above their waterbed that Tiffany is alive, walking around, and has a champagne bottle in her hand. She tosses it into the mirror, causing what can only be described as a waterbed bloodgasm.
Yeah.
It explodes like Johnny Depp's bed in Nightmare on Elm Street.
It does. I was like, what the hell is this? It would probably be the most anticlimactic. It would just like a bunch of things would fall down. They probably wouldn't be dead.
Yeah, I don't know that would be that mirrors that are constructed to be specifically above people's beds are made with anything but safety glass.
Right?
Right. And there's not a lot of whole glass mirrors in the no-tell motel newlywed suite business, is my guess.
No, I think that's a little too ritzy and expensive for that. Even like with high price hotels in Vegas, I think they're probably like reserve the mirrors for like the Papa Giorgio suite or whatever. But what I thought was actually kind of effective here is the fact that like, and this is something they kind of bring back from like the older Child's Play movies, is the realization that there is a living doll and they have the upper hand. That has been from like the beginning of Child's Play, and I always love that Mancini does it where they do the reveal right before the actual ultimate kill. And I mean, I just put myself in their position, and just the idea of like seeing this doll that you literally had just seen before come to life and staring at you is pretty freaky and like legit terrifying. And
I like that they actually react.
Yeah.
Because in so many modern movies, people see the most fantastical fucking things and they're like, oh, that's a thing that happened.
Yeah.
They're like, what are you doing? I know, we both know that you're in a movie, but there has to be a reality to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And when you see something fantastical, I don't care if it's cliche out of Steven Spielberg. You stare at that thing, you're like, holy shit, is this really happening?
Yeah.
I want to see that. You don't have to say it, but I want to see reactions. And people in Chucky movies, for the most part, react like something big and out of the normal is happening.
Totally.
Something that also is out of the normal is Chucky accessing his feelings.
Oh, yeah.
And so this bloodgasm just brings everything to the fore. It's that moment where you didn't know whether or not you were connected to somebody, but something happens and you look across the room at that person and you go, they get it. They get that. I get that they get it. We get it. And he immediately says, I love you. And this leads to a proposal using the ring off a severed finger.
I love it.
Chucky seems to have a little bit of performance issues getting off.
Yeah.
Then we get to see a lot more doll butt than I ever needed to see. That's an interesting component to this. And they go on to fuck. Finally, we're gonna see in the shadow of the fire, a raging fire, them make sweet, sweet doll love to one another.
Now, when I have to ask,
Yes.
Obviously when this happened in '98, this is, uncharted territory, manifest destiny when it came to fictional doll fucking on screen. But then the only thing I can think of now is Team America. And I wonder if Team America got inspired by this movie. I vividly remember when this scene happened in theaters, you couldn't hear the screen. People were losing their minds in the theaters. Like it was like, I cannot believe what I'm watching. This is literally connected to the same movie universe that has Chris Sarandon as a cop. Like, how the fuck is this happening? And it's still baffling. But you know what? Somehow Mancini earns it. Like, I'm with it. I'm not. It doesn't take me out of the movie. I'm like, all right, yeah, this makes sense.
I think that they go. Yeah. The key is that they know exactly how far they can go with it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't become like a Family Guy joke where it's a little too gross and a little too played out. It's funny. It's just like, what the fuck am I watching here? I mean, I thought that my favorite part was when Chucky is crawling away from blowing up Needle Nose's car, and he looks like the baby on the ceiling from Trainspotting.
Yes, he does. He totally does.
And then I thought, no, it's when Chucky is rocking out to White Zombie, but no, it's this scene here. It's the visible tongue kissing and everything's in the shadow and
it's the most romantic component of the entire film.
They have more raw chemistry between these two dolls than these two human beings do.
I know, it's so wild. Like that's really the measure of success for this movie.
I wish do either of you know if Brad Dourif and Jennifer Tilly were in the same room doing their voices, because it's so good and
I know.
Even just in voice work, they just have an insane amount of chemistry.
I wondered about that too, because like it is, their chemistry is just dynamite to the point where it had to have been the reason why. I mean, maybe Jennifer Tilly just really like hit it off with Mancini and stuff, but I have to imagine that's one of the reasons why she came back for the lead for like Seed of Chucky like after this, because they're so good together, and it could have been easy to just write her off. Because, I mean, spoiler alert of what happens at the end of this movie. Like, you could have easily have, like, written off where Tiffany isn't in the next one. But I think because they're so good, it's like, they're like, look, we're not doing another movie without the two of them. Like, and that's so crazy. Like, the fourth movie, like, to have a co-star basically steal the movie. Like, I mean, it's pretty awesome. I mean, I think it speaks to the success of this movie, but also just in the success of like getting away with half of the stuff that's going on in this movie. Like, she sells it.
Yeah,
like,
I buy them. I totally buy them as a couple. I buy them that they would have been a couple before they turned into dolls, and I buy them still being a couple. I mean, yeah, it's a toxic, codependent, abusive relationship, but I buy it. Yeah. I buy it more than I ever bought, Harley and Joker and Suicide Squad. I mean,
God, there's all I think that was a good thing to get rid of Leto for Birds of Prey.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to get rid of him in everything, frankly.
Yeah, God. Except for My So-Called Life, I will say he's a great hunk in that. He's awesome. I love him in that show. But other than that, time to go.
But Gina, he's so twisted.
Yeah, right.
He lies down on the ground with a bunch of knives and guns.
Yeah, I gotta send.
And he has himself a good old laugh.
Condoms.
Here's the measure of how poorly Leto does as Joker. Is that the portrayal of Charles Lee Ray as Chucky has lasted multiple decades, and there is nothing more genuine than when Chucky laughs in these movies. And the fact that Tiffany laughing in concert with that fits in and doesn't sound like an interloper, does not sound like a fifth wheel of any sort of kind, or some sort of, late in the season sitcom baby just added to, add spice to the proceedings, just fits right in, is a minor miracle, but one that this film should be celebrated for.
I agree. I mean, it's kind of crazy that the minute that she transfers to the doll in like the first half, there's no real doubt of whether or not this is going to work. And I while watching it last night, I was wondering, like, is it because of hindsight? Because I've seen this movie a bunch of times, but I really don't think so. Like, I think like the minute she blinks on the doll, is like, I'm in. Like, I don't question like, oh, is this going to be a stupid gimmick? Like, is this going to be lame? Like, it's almost as like it's almost like I've seen this. Like, it was meant to be. Like, I was like, all right, well, yeah, this works. This works in the fabric of the film. It works in the fabric of the franchise. It's like this has always been there to begin with. Like it's wild. Like it literally is like Bride of Frankenstein, but like fully embellished,
and also adds a little bit of meat to the lore. Of being able to transfer your soul into another object. Because up until now, Chucky's been the only example of this ever happening. And then all of a sudden it happens again, and they build on that in every subsequent sequel from this point. So they found a way to not make it just another Chucky wakes up inside this doll, tries to get out of the doll.
And that's what I love. Like, and that was what we were, because I watched with the group last night. I broke social distancing. I apologize. But, and we were talking about that. It was like, what a relief to like not have to have the same rigmarole of like, oh, great, he's chasing the kid again. Or, oh, great, he's chasing this. Like, no, he's like, that's kind of like, I mean, that's part of it, but like, it's not, it's a road movie. Like it's totally new. And I don't know. It's like, in terms of sequels, I think we did something at Consequence of Sound a while ago. I don't know where Bride of Chucky ranks, but I think it's in the top 20 for like the best horror sequels for sure. Because it's such a total reinvention of the franchise. And in a ways where you're like, why didn't they do this type of world building like by 2 or 3? I mean, it's.
I think it had to die in order for it to be reborn.
Yeah.
Universal took it over in 2, and I think 2 is a very good follow-up to the first one. And you have the benefit of still having a small kid being at the center of it, which I think is the first one's real secret weapon, is he's too young for anyone to listen to anything he says with any, seriousness. Mm-hmm. So when he says that Chucky is talking to him and telling him what to do, everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about, kid? And it carries over into 2, but when you get into 3, that act is very, very tired. Mm-hmm. And so this that period of time where it laid fallow allowed them to grow a different kind of crop out of the ashes of what had been there before. And I think you just build a better foundation.
Totally. And you can see with the sequels, it clearly opened like 20 doors for Mancini, because he was, where this is gone is insane. But
it gets infinitely more personal.
Yeah.
Like he is allowed to tell the kinds of stories he's always wanted to tell, using Chucky as just, again, that magic carpet to ride people off into.
Yeah.
So let's get back into the movie proper. I just have to say, writing about that doll sex scene was very difficult with my 9-year-old in the room. It took a lot of subterfuge, but we got through it. And the other thing is, at least 2 couples that night had very memorable wedding nights. Mm-hmm. Jesse and Jade, not among them. It's very difficult to make a stealthy exit from a waterbed. You can't just, sneak away. There's literal ripples from when you leave that marriage bed. both literally and figuratively.
Mm-hmm.
And so now both of them call David, worried more than ever that each one is a murderer, but he sees through this. There's no way both of you can think each other is the murderer. It has to be a misunderstanding. Of course, what sort of throws a corkscrew into the works, as it were, is when we cut to the next morning and Kathy Najimy has arrived for a cameo that says,
that was weird.
This is a favor.
Right?
This is a very recognizable person wandering into a movie which he has zero business. And not that I am sad to see Kathy Najimy. Anytime she wants to show up anywhere, I'm happy to watch. But it does come out of fucking nowhere.
I was trying to figure out why. Like, was she friend? Like, I mean, obviously, she never worked with Ronnie Yu.
Friends with Don Mancini. There's no other
right?
reason.
Like, but I'm trying to imagine, like, what did she work on that had anything to do with Mancini? I mean, like, obviously, Hocus Pocus is like the horror aspect for her, but like, I mean, was he involved in Soap Dish? I don't know. He wasn't involved in that. But like,
no,
that's weird. I was shocked.
I just wonder if it's a around town sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like they're fast friends or something like that, where he's like,
yeah.
I just want someone who has a great scream and can react appropriately and seem befuddled right up until the point she finds two dead, gory bodies, all staked with all manners of mirror inside of them. And of course, into the scene immediately is Jade and Jesse, because they have the worst timing of anyone.
Oh yeah, no, just the worst.
They are terrible at this. And of course they do the most damning thing you can do in a situation: run for it. But this time they have David in tow.
Now, here's the thing with David. As on our Nightmare 2 podcast for Halloweenies, I actually threw some shade because I was like, oh, what a cliche character, because that's how I remembered it. But he's not. And like, what I love about him is that like, he's actually probably the smartest character out of anyone in this movie. And I think one of the reasons why I thought he was like a stereotypical character is because of how bad how dirty they kill him in this movie. Like, yeah. And there's like some one-liners here where I'm just like, all right, come on. This is like literally like just a 90s, like way of like writing a queer character. But at the same time, it's like, well, it was the 90s, and like it's pretty great that they were actually able to have like a queer character that's in the movie. And obviously that's probably attributed to like Mancini too, like with being able to kind of make that happen in this narrative. But I was legit like shocked at like how like nuanced of a character he was when, like, because all I remember just like I remembered it in a negative light. And I actually felt more for his character than anyone else in this movie, because he literally is doing the smartest thing out of anyone. Like he distances himself when he should. He has all the right facts. Like he's quick on his feet in ways that they aren't. When he's even talking to Warren in the house in the first part, like he knows all the context in it. He's technically Basil exposition for like everyone. Like, so I don't know. I actually felt for his role, and I felt like really bad when he has his pre-Final Destination death. Like I thought he was kind of a tragic character in there. But
yeah, I think some of it is he suffers from the era in which the character type is born.
Yeah.
Because this is coming 1 year after my best friend's wedding.
Yeah.
And so you have the start of this trope, which he falls into, not out of design, but simply out of placement in time. So there's some of that he suffers from, but he is trying his absolute best, and there's very little about his character that seems, stereotypical.
Yeah.
For example, his bedroom looks like, I don't know, is he staying in his Nana's house? There's some very severe oak in his bedroom.
Yeah.
It's very austere for a teen on his way to college. Literally looks like he lives in an old folks home.
He does actually. Yeah, that's the come to think of it. I actually didn't even think about that. It's very true. I wonder how much of that was just like, hey, we need a shot of him on the phone. What's the nearby house? Let's get all the shots with him. We were going to do ADR, but we're going to actually have shots where he's in the room. So let's find a house in Toronto. And let's go for it.
It's very tight close up,
right?
That's for sure.
Yeah.
But David finds Chief Warren's body all curled up in that bench seat, pulls a gun on Jesse and Jade, And this is when Chucky and Tiffany have to reveal themselves because they're in a real pickle. There are cops who have noticed they've pulled over to the side of the road. We've got we're about to have a serious ticking clock. And so they pull two guns out on David. He freaks the fuck out and wanders into highway traffic and is immediately just crushed
it's awful.
by a passing truck. And with lots of extra bits that fly off as he's hit. Oh, it's really grisly. But I remember my audience reacting loudly to that.
Because it was, again, it's before that type of death. Like I was trying to think, like I was racking my brain last night trying to think of any other deaths that were like that before this. And I can't think of any. Like, I mean, Final Destination really popularized that because it was like anytime you see an empty frame with like a busy background, you're like, oh fuck, this person's dead. But at the time, like I remember thinking like this is really horrifying because like he doesn't just explode, like it like literally is a gulf of flames. Like, it's like, so harsh.
He's a human being that is mostly composed of chunks of bloody flesh.
Yeah.
And once any amount of force is pushed onto it, and he simply explodes in every direction. What makes it even worse is when they take off in the van, and you cut back to Jade looking out of the rear window to the aftermath of that, and the front grille of this truck is just decimated, and the guy is just looking at it like, there was a human being who was there, and now there's nothing.
Yeah.
It's grisly. You have to wonder, does Final Destination benefit from the not first, but in the right place and right time for that death to then become what it becomes?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think it's because in the Final Destination ones are hardly as gruesome as that. I don't think they are. I mean, because most of it are like flash in the pan. It's like boom, and then you're done.
Yeah,
it's the impact that actually is the bigger effect. Like in terms of gore, like this movie really goes there in ways that a lot of '90s movies weren't doing that. I mean, like there's obviously the opening scene with Scream where you actually see like the quick shot at Casey, and it's like pretty horrifying. But for the most part, you never really get that much gore. I mean, this is like kind of goes back to like almost like the trauma days, in weird ways. I revisiting, I was like kind of shocked that it was like late '90s because I just don't remember like the late '90s.
I think it benefits from being such a big comedy.
Yeah,
that it was allowed to get away with some things that other films wouldn't, because it elicits such outrageous laughs. And after you have two dolls having sex in shadow up against firelight, to go, well, this is too much, you'd be laughed out of the room. Like you're allowing two dolls to have sex in firelight, but not this, and you don't see the direct impact of it. Like, come on. Like, okay, you crazy kids, go for it.
Yeah,
it just gets away with so much more, and we all benefit from it. Chucky and Tiffany are forced to reveal themselves, as we said, and this results in a high-speed chase. And Chucky manages to shoot out a patrolman's tire through his headlight. That's just a great shot.
Yeah.
The guy's talented. My other thing that I love here, and you know this is kind of a direct result of Scream, of allowing people to discuss the fact that they've seen horror movies before, is one, not even introducing himself, saying, you all know who I am, right?
Yeah.
Like, you get this thing, right? And then Tiffany's like, oh, well, I guess I have to explain I'm Tiffany. But he doesn't. And they're just instantly like, yeah, you're Chucky.
Which is, I love. Like, I kind of miss that. I kind of miss just like, all right, we're in. You know, we're here because we love this. We don't need any sort of explanation. And this is something that Stephen King does all the time. Like I like The Outsider. I the book is whatever, but like the show I thought was good. But one of my things that drove me nuts about the show is that they literally spend like 2 fucking episodes trying to convince you that like supernatural exists. And it's like, look, I'm in. I don't need to be explained. I know that there's Reddit culture out there that needs everything to be like some sort of like connect the dots things. But like, if you just go with it, I'm good. And like the fact that this movie does is it works to its advantage, because if he did this whole fucking thing where he's like, well, actually, I was a killer in Chicago and I've been a body. It's like the fact that he just says like, oh, 3 or 4 movies would do it justice is great. It's like a fun, punchy title, or a punchy line that's total in line with like Kevin Williamson. I love it. And you move on. You don't need to sit there and belabor over the past.
And we get lots of reaction shots of it. The poor guy who's playing Jesse is left a little out to dry in this scene, because Tiffany's like, and you know me, and he's like,
he does confused really well. This poor actor, he's got confused down pat.
Maybe it's just the way his beautiful face lays against that amazing bone structure. But it's kind of like, hey, we got to be confused faster. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's reel this in. Luckily, we're safe from this because the film decides to add a ticking clock. Charles Lee Ray's and Tiffany's fingerprints were found at 2 of the crime scenes. And therefore, the police have decided they have to dig up the body of Charles Lee Ray. And lo and behold, that's where the heart of Damballa is. So now they got to get there before they take that body away. Otherwise, their whole plan is shot. And I love that we add this, we got to do this now element.
I also like that it means they can drive from Niagara Falls to where is he from? Hackensack?
Hackensack,
it's
yeah.
like about
Jersey.
2 hours.
Yeah.
Which would be across the entire state of New York.
Well, which I will say is an improvement of going from Springwood, Ohio to Camp Crystal Lake in Freddy vs. Jason, which they seemingly do in 45 minutes.
We mentioned that. We ranted about that.
Unreal. Like, in the same night. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it's ridiculous, but whatever.
It does bear some conversation, I feel.
Yeah.
To compare this to to Freddy vs. Jason. Because it's not to say that Freddy vs. Jason is any more ridiculous than this. It's just that Freddy vs. Jason just takes ridiculous and strips motivation and internal story dynamics out of it. And you're just left with questions. And it proposes things like Freddy's afraid of fire and Jason's afraid of water. Jason walked along the bottom of the goddamn Atlantic. Every film he's walking through rain, and now he's scared of water. He's walking through rain in that movie. It's called The First Fucking Act, and he doesn't seem to have a problem with being wet.
No.
He's a wet guy. He's into wet. In a dream sequence, he lives on a murder island with fitted sheets on his bed. He has a dresser drawer. He has a spare mask on the closet. God damn it. Okay. I feel like I underplay my rage at that particular episode, but it's been boiling the fuck over ever since. And I know that Ronnie Yu did not write Freddy vs. Jason. We know those 2 people did. We know their little excuses for all sorts of problems in that movie. But it just goes to show Ronnie Yu can elevate great material. Here, he's got solid, internally, it makes sense material. And he makes it look fantastic.
He really does.
Freddy vs. Jason, he makes shit look as good as it can look.
Out of all the eras, because I don't lump this into like the Platinum Dunes era, but I certainly do with like Freddy vs. Jason, because it's like literally the same year as you're gonna get Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake and all. And there's a sheen to it. There's like a blue, almost like aqua sheen, or metallic blue sheen to it. I mean, it literally looks like Mel Gibson's payback, like in both movies. In sometimes, like at least the night shots. And I think with this one, there's far more color, and it's a little more grounded and down to earth. So I like that a little bit more. But like Freddy vs. Jason, he goes like all in, and like when it's more the dreamy elements of it, it looks gorgeous. But what I love about this one is that he hadn't gotten there yet, and he kind of dialed back the sheen to kind of let a little more of the grime in. Like like even in the earlier parts where you're at the trailer park or you're at the rest stops and stuff. It like almost kind of takes on like a Farley Brothers sort of like realism, like gritty realism to it that I kind of like and appreciate. But you're right. I mean, he's very hyper stylized, and I don't think it's coincidence that, like, granted he didn't write both Freddy vs. Jason and Freddy Chucky, but like both, like, a lot of his past movies, especially going back in like the 80s with like The Postman Strikes Back, they all deal with like road or like a travel or a journey. And I wonder if that's like something that he just loves using as a medium, you know, like he gets bored maybe of settings and he's like, all right, I want to go to another place.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this movie gets there. The entire sequence in the graveyard smacks entirely of Bride with White Hair.
Yeah.
It's just, he has the flowy material in the background. He burns Tiffany. We'll get to, you know, Tiffany gets burned, and she becomes sort of that bride with white hair aesthetic, and it allows the movie to reach what he was known for up until that point. But there's just an internal clockwork here that moves and fits better than in Freddy versus Jason, and I just don't think he's the kind of filmmaker who can make junk work. Mm-hmm. He can make it look pretty, and that film looks pretty damn good. It looks glossy. It doesn't look like some Joe off the street made it. But it's a benefit when he is given material and performances to really elevate. Yeah. So let's get back to it. We're on our way to where I think all great doomed relationships end up. New Jersey. Sorry, Gina.
You're not wrong.
Born and raised.
Are you from New Jersey?
Born and raised in New Jersey. Yep.
Are you? Did you happen to be born in Haddonfield, New Jersey, or no?
No, but you grew up in that general part of New Jersey, southern New Jersey, that like no one ever really talks about.
Oh, nice. Did your neighborhood look like Pete and Pete? Because I think didn't they film there? So, like, it was like Hoboken.
Hoboken's more like northern New Jersey,
like north.
But yeah,
okay.
I'm more like the Pine Barrens area, like in The Sopranos.
Oh, nice. Awesome. That's awesome.
So we now have this ticking clock here, and they have to swap the van out for a Winnebago. They managed to kill an older couple and stuff them in the closet. This movie loves to transport dead bodies across state lines. And we rejoin the action with Tiffany not really understanding the contours of Katherine Heigl's face when putting on makeup. This is not Catherine's best look. Let's just put that out there. But that's okay. She's got other things on her mind. That is making Chucky Swedish meatballs. And if I had one question to ask Dawn at this moment in time, it would be, what is the significance of Swedish meatballs? Is it a commentary on heterosexual domesticity, or is it just you were in IKEA a lot?
I think Swedish meatballs is kind of like, it's sort of like that stereotypical housewife meal. I think she bases everything that she knows about being a housewife from like a sort of weird sort of 1950s, but she's also got like a violent feminist streak in her as well.
Yes,
I mean, she's got the little apron on. And again, I just love how these dolls move, and she's like just kind of doing this little like baby doll walk. Like she looks like literally one of those little walking dolls from like the 80s. So kind of, you'd wind up and they'd very painstakingly move like about an inch at a time. And children were supposed to be dazzled by this because it would take like 45 minutes to cross your living room. And then it would burn through like 4 D-size batteries just doing that. But she's got these she's got her little plate of food, her cookies, and she's so cute. I love her so much.
It's like it's in these scenes where I'm like, she loves you so much. Stop being such a fucking.
I can't. I honestly, I have to, admit, I do not know how she made such a mess in the kitchen.
I know.
I don't know how long they were. I mean, they only could have been in the RV for a couple of hours, and like every plate is stacked up and just covered in like food and sauce, and everything's just a disaster.
It's really cute, but it's also like obviously there's a tragedy element to it. One of the things I thought while watching this is like, I don't know, like, is it trying to be like the Wendy and Jack thing from The Shining? Like, I wondered. I wanted to bring this up earlier, but I didn't. I guess now is a good time because it's got like there's an animosity to Chucky in this that he's always been obviously a prick from the beginning, but like there's this sort of like frustrated Archie Bunker sort of way about him in this, obviously with the domesticity like themes. But it reminds me really of like the Wendy and Jack's like stuff in like The Shining, and even down to like the way that like Chucky's hair is in this, like, and like Brad Dourif almost kind of takes on like a Nicholson sort of thing. Like his demeanor and the way he treats Tiffany in this is almost like exactly like how Jack treats Wendy when she like comes up and he's like, oh, you know, you get a lot of writing done today, and he's just like, what do you want? You know, it's like, what do you want me to do about it? Like, you know, that sort of like belabored like exhaustion of like the wife like angle. Like I wondered if like if he did get an influence from Nicholson in the movie. I don't know, maybe I just was looking way too into it and I was just into The Shining from the 40th anniversary.
No, I can see that, and I think that it illustrates. It's a classic. And both scenarios are a classic, you know, hair trigger relationship situation where she is literally kind of tiptoeing around him to not make him upset. But you know, the irony is that she's just as bad as he is. I mean, she can definitely hold her own against him. So
she is, but she has the righteous angle of this, is that she is giving it the best she can give it, and he can't step up beyond base emotion level to actually try to but they're also not in the circumstances that would allow him to really be emotionally there. He's holding a gun to a guy driving a car.
Yeah, but also he's kind of embarrassed almost when Jesse says, you know, she's not all that great a housekeeper. Like,
yeah,
like he's almost a little sheepish about it.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't want his relationship judged. Now he's not only responsible for his actions, but the actions of this other person that he felt like he was okay with. But now that that's even brought into question, he immediately just goes off. It lights his fuse so fast. And you can tell he is not emotionally prepared to be in a relationship. That's right. Hot take, everyone. Chucky's not ready to get married, and he's certainly not ready to have children. I'm saying, listen, this might come off as judgmental. I'm not in the relationship. I'm not saying there aren't, that there's a spark there, but he needs to grow the fuck up.
Yeah,
honestly.
I mean, this is literally a coming of age story for a mass murderer who became a doll for 13 years or 10 years. Or
it is a story of transformation over the course of what is now 4, 5, 6, 7 plus a TV series. So there's a genuine arc to this that Jason doesn't have, that Freddy can't have, that certainly Michael can't have.
No, God, no.
And he does, and I think it enriches the experience. And that's why I think ultimately, for me, it is the most creatively rewarding franchise of the icons of horror.
I'd agree.
As it were.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the most unexpected, and I think that in terms of the arc of where Chucky is taken, God, I mean, if you would have showed me like Seed of Chucky like in 95 or 94 when I was watching like Child's Play 3, I'd been like, what is this? Like, this is crazy. Like, this is legit crazy.
Yes.
But yeah, it is cool how like they are, in terms of like commitment to the story and the franchise and not kind of rebooting and redoing it. That's what I love so much about this franchise, is that they've stuck to its guns, where it's like you watch like Halloween and it's like literally a fucking choose your own adventure. Like, well, if you want to go this way, you can go that way. You want to go this. And like Child's Play, it's pretty been linear with the exception of the remake, which is why I think he created such an uproar when it was being remade, because it's like, well, no, I've kept this story going on for 20 to 30 years now at this point almost.
Yeah. And I think if they had done Child's Play, which I have not watched yet, I won't personally pay into that. I think it's coming on by the time this airs. It will have been on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
But I think if they had released Child's Play from the burden of having to recreate Chucky they didn't even call him Buddy. I think if they had just gone away from that and gone, what if a toy becomes homicidal, and just taken that, I would have zero problem with it, because you would have taken it in a different direction. And I think you would have gotten less of a rebut from people, and I think it would have given it better creative direction.
Agreed.
In my mind. Yeah. But again, I have not seen the movie, so I can't judge it. So let's get back to this movie, which I have seen, and I love to judge because it's excellent. We have this great blow up in the Winnebago. Tiffany gets launched into an open oven door. Chucky blows out the side window like he's in a Die Hard movie, and the Winnebago crashes just outside the cemetery gates. We've unlocked the lightning machine. Let's crank up the wind. Let's get real bride with white hair in this bitch.
Oh yeah.
This is what this movie is really, really cranking. It turns out they sort of pair off with Jade with Chucky and Jesse with Tiffany, and I love the little noises Tiffany makes as she's
the ADR is wild in that.
It's fantastic. They find that the coroner's assistant is already there trying to dig up his grave. But this guy has gone above and beyond when it comes. He's dug what looks like to be a spool around the coffin.
Yeah.
There's a lot of extra room, and he's done this by hand. There's no machinery there. It's a lot of digging. Generally, when you're digging up a coffin, you just like dig up the size of the coffin with a couple extra inches so you can get a rope around that bad boy. I outside of cinema, I'm not really sure the point of it, but it sure does look wild.
I didn't even think about that. That is so true. It's so ridiculous.
I mean, it's gigantic.
It's huge. It's deeper than it would be if you actually were just digging the damn coffin, the grave to begin with. Oh my God.
Yes. I don't know if there was a bunch of other coffins in there and it was just a volume deal. I also don't know why a serial killer from Chicago was buried in Hackensack, New Jersey.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's a good point too.
Listen, again, it's a movie, these are little but details that in a lesser movie I would find egregious, but in here I just find charming. But we have a massive fight that breaks out between the two of them in a sort of standoff situation. Jade ends up in a fight with Tiffany where Tiffany pulls a Mike Tyson on her ear, which is really great. And of course we see that beautiful shot of broken plates in a fiery puddle. Just makes you think,
Yeah.
Is that what my life is? Broken plates in a fiery puddle? Maybe that's what the world is. I'm going to pause. I'm going to take a 20-minute cry, and you guys talk amongst yourselves. No, we're doing good. Not the world is doing good. I'm fine enough. But we now have this big standoff in which Tiffany is exchanged for Jade. But Chucky does not abide by the rules, and as soon as our young lovers are reunited, Chucky throws a knife in alt CGI glory, spinning like a top across this very windy field right into Jesse's back. And I do have to wonder, now he's the expert in jumping into bodies, I'm not. But is mortally wounding someone that you're about to possess the best move for you?
Yeah, but he doesn't mortally wound him. Jade just pulls the knife out. He's all right. He's okay.
Yeah, she shouldn't do that. He is not a doctor. I don't really trust him to drive that van, if I'm being honest with you. He's not all there. He's got great abs, but that doesn't always translate to medical knowledge. You shouldn't pull that out.
One of the things I feel like horror movies underestimate all the time, in addition to sex scenes, obviously, is the wounds. A couple years ago, I opened up a can of cinnamon rolls while watching Harry Potter. Harmless thing. Would have been easy, and it would have been really easy if I would have actually read the instructions to open it. But instead, like an idiot, I got a knife and tried to open the can of these Pillsbury pumpkin scones, or whatever the fuck I was making, and sliced my hand 3 fingers open, and small wounds by horror standards. blood everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't stop. I had to like get like, I didn't have any Band-Aids, so I just like literally had to get paper towels and then duct tape it, and I had this like duct tape hands. I literally looked like Devin Sawa in Idle Hands, and blood was pouring out of that. And I was like, so that was just a small little flesh wound on 3 fingers. If there's a knife that's through your back, it's gonna go everywhere. Like,
Yes.
So that's I feel like he's down. Like he'd be down. It's over.
Yeah, it's not the best move.
No.
Oh, I failed to mention that this movie loves to tie up more people than a 30s Wonder Woman comic. They just have an endless amount of rope available to them. Maybe they're stuffed with it for all I can tell. But this does not result very well. Tiffany is stabbed by Chucky. When she tries after Ika, she literally stabs him in the back, and says the immortal line, "We belong dead," but he comes back from that to stab her, and they can't get along.
So we don't get a chainsaw fight, but we do get a shovel fight, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
Oh, that shovel fight is a better fight sequence than if we're talking about Freddy versus Jason. Anything in that.
I know.
Yeah, no contest.
I didn't think I needed to see two like dolls like fighting with like with shovels, but after watching it again last night, I was like happy that I was able to add that to my quarantine for sure.
It's fantastic. I mean, they're really going at it. Those shovels are distractingly shiny, and whoever those little people are in that shot, the way it is filmed from above, you really can't tell the scale.
No.
And it works.
It does.
It works.
Yeah.
Oh,
great practical effects.
Such a miracle.
I mean, very little CGI, which I love in this, and even down in the explosions, they feel real. So, yeah.
Yeah. Even though I find the CGI sparks in that Winnebago crash to be ridiculous.
A little much. Yeah.
Just, holy shit. Yeah. Also, you don't really have gas in rubber tubing through a Winnebago. Like an oven in that circumstance would be operating through like a canister of propane gas, not gasoline. You don't. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a wonderful movie. But they managed to sort of kill each other off to a degree. But our venerable detective, who's popped up on television here and there throughout to be doubted by every anchor person and apparently junior detective near him, in his very cautious, approach to this case. But he arrives to see Chucky acting like a maniac inside his own grave, where he lands on top of his rat farm of a body.
Yeah.
We get that very genuine scream from Chucky about it. He arrives on the screen. It's like, the fuck is happening here? And Jade steals his gun and kills off Chucky after he says, listen, I've died a bunch of times, but it really sucks. And I'll come back, but the dying part sucks. And then she plugs him full of lead.
And you get the classic, every movie has it since the beginning, where you just see his body fly back in slow-mo, and it still cracks me up every time. Just ridiculous.
The physics of Chucky, as we noted this in the last one, are a little suspect.
Yeah.
But you know what? What are you going to do? Sometimes he weighs a little, sometimes he weighs a lot. But the detective, upon seeing this, realizing these two are not the killers, not that he'll convince anyone who was, but he goes, you two go on home.
Yeah.
I think it's a fucking walk from New Jersey back.
Yeah.
Just head on off by yourself, you two.
And I love that it's like clearly like, all right, he must have some fucking wild authority, because he's like, Jesse and Jade, they didn't do it. All right, well, case closed. Let's move on. Like, ridiculous,
But I also feel, if for a film that takes place in a universe where all of the mystical serial killers' accoutrement
that's true.
was gathered in the same place, and they're like, all right, I don't want to believe this shit, but I've seen it too much.
Yeah.
It's just what happens, y'all. It's what seems to come across. And so, yeah, they're left to go off to their own devices. And he goes to check on Tiffany's charred remains. And he gives it a good poking, as you do. just enough to wake her up so that she can give birth. And this was the other. I mean, this movie knows a way to end.
Yeah.
Because my audience was screaming at the top of their lungs. Just the
Same.
could not believe what they were seeing. It is the natural extension of what you've seen before, but even then, it is so outrageous. We were just left in awe.
Yeah.
And I still am. It's incredible. It's incredible that they were then able to pick it up from here.
I know. I remember walking out of the theater and being like, well, that's the end. There's no way. There's no way they followed this movie up. Also, side note, I think the pregnancy for Tiffany is faster than the xenomorphs in Alien, like with the facehuggers and all. Like it is just like one night, like one day. I mean, that's wild.
Yeah, unless there's a longer journey that we're not aware
Yeah.
of. But it's, but we don't know voodoo physiology. It's a very complicated system. And so we're already dealing with magic. Why not? So that leaves us to, at an end, unfortunately, we might one day pick up where Glenn or Glenda are revived. But before we end our conversation about Bride of Chucky, of course, we should play Choose Your Own Death Venture. And that is where, of the deaths that we witnessed here in this section of the movie, if you were forced to die that way, which one would you choose? Oof. And why? Now, up to bat for this section of the movie, we have die in a waterbed bloodgasm, get shot in the head and shoved into the back of an RV, be exploded by a semi-truck. We already had nails to the head, but guess what? It didn't kill you. So now you're going to shove those nails farther into your face and get stabbed in the back at the same time, or you can just get shot. There's a lot of people shot.
Yeah,
here.
there's three, right? I think they're the two in the RV and then the grave digger, right?
The grave digger. Yeah. So, Michael, you're our guest. You get to go first.
Yeah,
what do you say?
I got, obviously, if I don't want to feel any pain, I don't want the turmoil. I mean, no one, unless you got to be a real fucking sadist or masochist to like choose Warren's death. That is just torture. I think I got to go with the grave digger. Convenient. You're already in a grave. You get to be buried next to like the most notorious serial killer of that universe. Maybe I could get some TV action going on there because it's part of the huge press. I'm liking that. Or I get to be the first Final Destination quote death. So I think it's a toss up between the two of those.
Well, you got to choose.
All right.
It's not general.
I'm going with the grave digger then, because I think the explosion is too terrifying. I think getting hit by a car would hurt too much. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, Gina, what say you?
I actually am going to go with getting hit by a truck because I do think your lights are going to go out real quick. Like you'll see that truck coming and then just good night. You won't feel anything. I mean, I don't envy the task of the person who's going to have to clean me up, but that won't be my problem. I'll be ascending to heaven with my really wings and my harp.
Yeah.
For sure. I'm gonna go with a more grisly death here. I'm gonna go with the waterbed bloodgasm. First off, my body gets to be found by Kathy and Jimmy. Big fan.
Yeah.
Always wanted to meet her. This might not always be the way I thought about it, but you know what? Beggars can't be choosers. Secondly, I'm getting $500 out of the deal, and I get to make it with Margot Kidder's daughter.
Yeah, which is
so. I say that's a win-win-win. I'm totally going that direction.
I think that's a great response. In hindsight, I do. I question my actions now.
Well, you know what? That's the choice. Yeah. Once you've made the choice, you kind of have to stick with it, regardless of the circumstance or the repercussions. But before we go, Michael, where can people hear and read more from you?
You could find me at Consequence of Sound. We got a lot of stuff planned for June. I think in July we're going to be celebrating some blockbusters. The next episode I'll be on for Halloweenies is the final chapter. I promise that I'm going to be on all the Tommy Jarvis chapters for the Halloweenies run. Mm-hmm. And we're finishing up Dolores Claiborne on Losers Club, and we'll be going into Nightmares and Dreamscape. So busy summer for horror.
Yes.
So exciting then.
Yes, I really recommend the Losers Club for King fans. I find it delightful, and I really enjoy the reread along with you guys.
Oh, thanks so much.
I really enjoy it. Okay, Gina, where can people see and hear more from you on these here internets?
I am a writer over at The Spool. That's spool.net. I do movie and TV reviews. Some of my recent reviews have included the Shudder movie Z, which is very, very good and very, very creepy. I've also reviewed The Wretched, which, because of our bizarre circumstances that we're in right now, is an independent horror film that is somehow also the #1 movie at the box office right now, because that is all that is playing anywhere. It is apparently getting
the drive-ins.
It is apparently getting a robust run on the drive-in circuit, but you should see it. It's very good. I would recommend it regardless of that. And I am on Twitter under Porcelain72.
Yes, do it today, people. Check it out. Of course, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Email us at killbykillpod@gmail.com. Rate and review us on iTunes. It's how we're seen and heard by more people. We appreciate when you do it. So for myself, for Gina, and for Michael, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.